Well, good morning to you all. It's good to have you here with us today. Any kind of selection procedure isn't easy. It's not easy for those who have to go through it, and it's not easy for those who have to oversee it. But there are changes going to be in the way that we discern in the Church in Wales. Very necessary changes that will make a big difference, not only to those who will be overseeing discernment and the help that it will give them in discerning, but also the support and help that those who come to be discerned very much need, whether they are successful or if they are unsuccessful, for us to help them realise their ministries, because ministry is not always in the context of ordination, and that must be made very, very clear. So without any further ado, I'm handing over to you then.
Diolch Esgol. Candidates for ministry have always been through some sort of a discernment process. Let them be tested, and if they prove faithful, then let them serve in ministry. A period of testing of their vocation, and that there have always been some sort of criteria, something by which you judge not just the person's inward call, do they honestly believe that God has called them to this ministry, but also are they the sort of person that we as a church want as our public face and our public representative ministry. Any change anywhere in the system is going to affect all of us. And so I'm asked you to be here today, not to reveal the murderer, but to tell you about the changes that are happening on a provincial level, and so that together we can make some decisions about how that affects the work we do right from the first moment someone comes out as having a calling. The reasons why these changes have happened on a provincial level are quite complex. The discernment criteria are regularly reassessed, about every 5 or 7 years or so. This particular reassessment, we've changed the language from criteria to qualities. We're looking for certain qualities in the people who are coming for ministry, and those qualities are faithfulness, a sense of mission, a vibrant spirituality, a character appropriate to the work that they're going to do, someone who's able to form good relationships, and someone who has the potential for leadership and for teamwork, and someone who understands what they're letting themselves in for by terms of vocation and ministry in the Church in Wales. And I think you'll agree that overall that's a fairly good list of what we're looking for. Under those headings, there are various criteria, as they always were, and you have those on one of the many documents I sent you in advance. Other reasons for the change are that England changed its discernment strategy and its discernment processes quite considerably about 5 years ago. And because the boundary and the border between England and Wales is so porous, it makes sense for there to be some sort of, not exactly the same on both sides of the border, but a big enough similarity that we can both see that ordinands have been through the right process if we take them from England or they take ordinands or curates from Wales. Much as we'd like to keep them all this side of the border, lives do change and people do move. And so there's that idea of a certain concomitance with England. We're also able to learn from some of their good practice and some of their mistakes. Another reason I think behind the church changes is we've had the independent inquiry into sexual abuse, ICSA, in public life. And it did look very carefully at instances of abuse, particularly sexual abuse in church, and it recommended a whole lot of things around safer recruitment and so that some of that safer discernment is built into the process now, and there are opportunities for building it even further in. Most of this has already been passed by the bench of bishops, so it's going to happen. We've just got to get used to it. Some of it hasn't yet, and where it hasn't yet, I'll make that perfectly clear. But the things that haven't yet, I've included because I think that there is a groundswell of support for them from the ministry officers, and it will go back to the bench. And rather than summon you to these meetings on a regular basis, it seems sensible just to give you that warning now. So, key questions we need to address today. Do you understand the new discernment system? And do you understand your own roles and responsibilities within that new system? How can we operate the new system given the resources we have, which does include people's time? How is the voice of the diocese heard in the process? This has all been provincially decided so far, but the voice of the diocese is very important. Firstly, because it is the diocesan, the bishop, who makes any of the final decisions in the process. Anything else is advisory to the bishop. And so it's absolutely right that the bishop should be able to tell us what will help him make good decisions and what won't help him make good decisions. And secondly, because not all dioceses are the same. Our diocese is St Davids, deeply rural, bilingual, got a whole lot of things going through it which maybe aren't the same for Monmouth or Llandaff or Bangor. And so we need to be sure that candidates will be able to flourish in ministry here. And not every candidate could flourish in ministry here. And then we need to make sure that the candidates in the system, and this is question 4, are looked after in the system. That we don't just expose people and leave them in a very vulnerable position and drop them hard so that they lose their faith and they grow very cynical and dispirited both with God and with us. We need to think about how we prepare candidates to go through the new system, because it won't be the same as going through the current system. So what vocations advisors do with them may change. What is done at certain points in the process will change. And finally, there is a question about protecting the whole church. Sometimes we get wolves in sheep's clothing, and the people who want to exploit churches and congregations for their own reasons are often very plausible. They often believe deeply themselves that they're in it for the right reasons. They sometimes have very poor self-knowledge and don't recognise quite what a disaster they'd be in a parish. So we need to have a set of good questions to ask to try and do some basic weeding out of the people who we think would be a danger to themselves and to others in ministry. And we've had all those questions all along. We've been calling them red flags. But I don't think our red flags were really known to everyone working, in the Fellowship of Vocation or all the vocations advisors. And the less you raise the odds, sometimes the easier it is to walk away. So if you can tell someone at the Fellowship of Vocation stage, yes, well, you're quite a recent convert, and we like to see more commitment to the church before you go on to the next step. That's much better than them coming to diocesan discernment and getting a go away for at least 2 years and get more experience of the church in Wales.